Welcome to another episode, Pound for Pound Boxing Report, episode 262. I am your host, Michael. Joining me this week, Gail from Communities Digital News, Jacob from Jab Boxing. As you see, doing a new format. I posted a quick little message earlier in the day, given the fact that Google Hangouts on air, YouTube live stuff that has ended, excuse me. At the suggestion of a regular on the show, Gus from Corruption and Boxing, he suggested I use StreamYard. So I like it so far. And for the time being, that's what we're going to roll with. And getting some positive reviews from Jacob and Gail. What's going on, Gail and Jacob?
Hey, good to be here. Midweek boxing action, plenty of views, news, and opinions.
Indeed. And shout out to Lisa in the chat. Got to have you back on the show sometime. For those who are new to the Pound for Pound Box Report, Pound for Pound Box Report live YouTube show slash podcast that discusses all things boxing. The motto is when boxing is good, we will talk about it. When it's bad, we will talk about it. Bottom line is, if it concerns the sweet science, we will talk about it. If you want to find out all information regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to, P4P Boxing Report, .wordpress.com. What page to um, find us wherever there's a RSS feed available, Spotify, iTunes, SoundCloud, and whatnot. Um, You can also check the Router page to check out my online fitness page. I am a online coach, online health and fitness coach for Beachbody.com. Let's build together. August fitness group challenge is underway. Nick, wink, wink, not Gail. You can join anytime if you're interested. Just reach out to me on the Pound for Pound Box Report blog page. You check the link to my coaching page, or you can reach me out on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76. Let's get things going this evening. Recapping what went down last week. I preface this by saying I didn't see much of the ESPN Plus card that took place Saturday, so I'm gonna rely on you guys, Gail and Jacob. Um, the reason I named this particular episode Warranted and Unwarranted Hype is because the focus of the weekend was in part on Robeisy Ramirez, um, young, hotshot Cuban, two-time Olympian. He's the guy who beat Shakur Stevenson in the 2016 Olympics in the medal round. Uh, Started his professional career against a fighter by the name of Adan Gonzalez out of Denver. Uh, not Didn't get off to a promising start at all. And I'll go to you, Gail. Ramirez knocked down uh, Adan with the upset decision to win. Ramirez, from the clips I saw, he got caught early. He got put down. I know he claims that he won, but he never seemed to recover from that knockdown. Not as much physically, but from a mental, psychological standpoint. I'll get the conversation going with you, Gail, and then you can follow up, Jacob. Your thoughts on what many feel is a shock or upset, at least. The Ramirez, the much ballyhooed Ramirez, upset in his pro debut.
Yeah, you got to feel bad for him. The script didn't go to plan, but boy, hasn't 2019 been the year of the upset? Well, think about it. We've just been shocker after shocker, and some at different levels than others. But, you've had Andrew Concio, you've had Andy Ruiz Jr., you've had some others along the way. And here we go again with Ramirez. It's a big ask. It really is a big ask, no matter how talented an amateur fighter is, to make that conversion. And some guys eventually do fine, but the transition period can be rough. It's a completely different skill set, different approach. And, he had the added pressure of having had a long 9-month layoff while he was on ice going through Mexico to be able to legally enter the United States after having gotten out of Cuba. Um, my understanding, if you haven't, and by the way, as an aside, if you haven't read the absolutely tremendous Sports Illustrated article about his journey coming over to the United States, it's worth your time. Um, it wasn't clear to me how much training he was really getting in while he was more or less hiding out in Mexico. Um, Certainly not the level he needed to make this sort of debut. And frequently you put in an opponent, who looks like he's a bit of a typical journeyman at whatever skill level you're looking for. So here you had Adan Gonzalez at 5-2 and no knockouts. So you figure, okay, it's not going to hurt him at least. He's a safe bet. He might make him grind it out. Um, but Gonzalez came to play. Gonzalez, sort of didn't get the memo that this was supposed to be a showcase fight after all this time. But, you know, um, he put on by far the better fight. Ramirez just, for whatever reason, he wasn't there. He wasn't quite prepared. He hadn't quite made the transition in the way that he thought. But it's certainly not fatal. There's a lot of guys who went on to have really great careers who lost their professional debut. So, it happens. And others who were on the road from transitioning and lost. The one that comes to mind for me is Bernard Hopkins lost his pro debut in 1988, and he had served 5 years in prison. So he is proof that, you don't have to define the whole rest of your professional path by what happens in the ring. The other person in history who lost his first fight was Henry Armstrong. So on the one hand, it's really disappointing for him, especially given how much the hype machine was running. But this does not have to be fatal. He should take heart from these examples from history, dust himself off, make sure that learning occurs. That's really important, and move on. The other guy you can look to in much more recent history, hey, Vasil Lomachenko lost to Orlando Salido in his second pro fight. So again, proof that an early loss like this doesn't mean you aren't destined for a great career. But really, really a surprise. It was the headline of the night.
And shout out to Jeff Boxing in the chat. He noted B Hop losing. He also mentioned Juan Manuel Marquez, um, future Hall of Famer if he's not already. He lost in his pro debut as well. Jeff also said in the chat that he heard from a guy who was at the gym with him that he wasn't being trained well at all. Said they had him sparring amateurs with 10 or so fights. I'll go to you, Jacob. Your reaction to the fight, your level of surprise. Um,
Well, I didn't really, know a ton about Ramirez, or even Gonzalez. So, I wouldn't say I was shocked. I mean, I knew he was being touted, like as the, Cuban superstar, in the making. But with boxing, like what happens a lot is that if you don't come prepared, and especially if you serve up somebody that's supposed to lose, sometimes that can motivate that other person to put on, the best performance of their career, of what, little career they may have. and he got that early knockdown, and it just seemed like it didn't go any good. It didn't go a good way for Ramirez. But it's I don't think it's a it's a bad thing necessarily. It is his first professional fight, so there's the transition from the amateurs to the professional ranks, and then like was said before, many people have lost. The main thing is, can they take what they didn't do in this fight, what they should have done? Can they take that? Can they go back to the gym? Can they, turn it around? Work on the things that that they need to work on, because you can always climb your way back up to the ranks. Many of the best boxers in the world have had a loss in their career. Maybe not as early as the first loss, besides some of the names that you guys named, but even Manny Pacquiao, lost early in his career. I think it was in maybe like his second year fighting. But we'll see what he does. It is concerning that you're coming for your debut. You have a promotion behind you that's touting you, and you didn't come prepared. That part, I think Gail said it on a show, maybe last show or 2 shows ago. The mental aspect of the game is very important. So if you can have all the physical gifts in the world, but if you don't have your mental aspect right, and maybe you're buying into what everybody's selling, saying that, oh, you're the best, you're a top prospect, you're going to be a world champion, and you're not training, and you don't got yourself right mentally, then this is the kind of things that can happen. So hopefully he's able to steer the ship in the right direction. So it's definitely early enough and possible. Again, it's not the end of the world. And again, it wasn't like a full 12-round fight. This is just a beginning fight. So there wasn't a ton of rounds to bank.
Yeah, I mentioned Jeff Boxing in the chat. Once again, shout out to him. Also, want to give a shout out to Lisa Bales, and longtime fan, Pound for Pound Boxer Report, Denise Ward. I got to get both of you ladies on the show sometimes. One of these days. Got to get Lisa back, I should say. I got to get Denise on there whenever she has the time. I know school starts, and she works in the school system, so got to find some time to do that one of these days. Uh, on the This fight took place in Philly, undercard on the main event. Jason Sosa, former world title challenger, I believe, fought a guy by the name of Rhodes. Stopped him, scored a TKO. From what I've seen of him, very impressive on his behalf. He showed power in the left hook. That's how he got one of the knockdowns. I go to you, Jacob. Your thoughts on this fight, and your thoughts on the career of Sosa. Like I said, he has challenged for a belt before. Where does he fit in the featherweight, junior lightweight landscape, in your opinion?
Yeah, Sosa is a decent fighter. He has 3 losses and he has 4 draws. But I mean, his losses have come against Lomachenko, which I think we remember that fight. I think Lomachenko was kind of egging him on and kind of making fun of him a little bit. Kind of like how he does. He lost to Gamboa, who isn't the same Gamboa, and then he lost earlier in his career. So kind of on the theme that we were just talking about in his 5th fight. But he had a pretty good showing against Walters. I thought he was lucky to get a draw in that fight. But he did get a draw on that fight. But he beat Fortuna, for a title. I think it was a WBA title. So he has skills, and he has I think he's fought some big names. So I think he looked really good in this fight. He was really attacking the body well. He landed a monster, I think, left hand that put Rhodes down pretty hard. But I think he can adjust and be, if not, maybe he won't be a champion, but he can put in some good fights. I think against some of the champions. I think he would be a good kind of measuring stick and whatnot. But he's a good fighter. I like Sosa. I think he has some skills. But again, maybe if people remember him from the Lomachenko fight, he kind of didn't look that great in that fight. But it's against Lomachenko, so it's he doesn't really make a lot of people look great. So
I see Daniel has joined us from the Inscriber. Get him into the conversation. I'm going to go back and ask your opinion, Daniel, about Robeisy Ramirez's surprising loss in his professional debut over the weekend. Comment on that quickly, and then pick up the conversation about Jason Sosa and his stoppage win. Unmute your mic, Daniel. I don't think he's there. I'll go to you, Gail. Your thoughts on Sosa's win?
Yeah, a good solid win for Sosa. We need to remind ourselves he was not originally intended to be the main event. His fight was intended to be the co-main event. And it escapes me who it was that got injured and had to bow out of the main event.
Frampton.
Thank you, Carl Frampton. That's right. And Carl Frampton had that freaky hotel broken hand incident last week. So he was supposed to be the main event. So that's a little bit of a shock to the system when a guy finds out, okay, you're now the big draw, you're the main event. And he handled it really well. Sosa's career has been so interesting. He's one of those guys who has had a lot of brought and breaks and weird things happen to him, very random like this. Some have not gone that well. And many of you will remember the fight that he had against Nicholas Walters in 2015. Was one of those, turning stone resort fights. And
was that the draw?
That was the draw.
Okay.
And a lot of people thought that Sosa completely got robbed in that fight, and I'm one of them. I think he beat Walters hands down. And at the time, Walters was undefeated, 25-0, flavor of the month, big deal. Everyone was super excited about the Axeman. And Sosa absolutely won and lost on the cards. And he was furious. Then that's the kind of fight that just is so demoralizing in your career. You're almost better off in a lot of ways with just a good, honest beating that you can say, yeah, I lost that. Yeah, I get it. It's clear, no shame in it. I'm good. In this case, he just damn well knew he got robbed. He did come back immediately with a TKO win over Javier Fortuna a few months later. So he got right back on the horse. That fight was in Beijing, in China. So, Sosa has just had to battle a lot through his career. And I'm real pleased to see that he got a good, solid stoppage win in sort of unusual circumstances. And I think he's far more than a gatekeeper. He's still only 31 years old. There's still a whole lot of things you can do in the super featherweight division. And I'd like to see Top Rank, you reward him for it. He stepped up. He in a lot of ways saved that card. He really did. So let's see what happens to El Canito.
Okay, let me see if Daniel's there. If you're there, Daniel, unmute your mic, please. If you're there,
okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, it's just weird to me, this new setup. Yes.
Your thoughts on the surprising loss from Robeisy Ramirez in his pro debut, and your thoughts on Jason Sosa's win, and where does he fit in the featherweight, super featherweight landscape?
It doesn't matter a lot of times how decorated you are when it comes to amateur competition, and we know Ramirez's pedigree. He beat Shakur Stevenson. He beat Ivan Voranchik. It doesn't matter if you can't able to translate to the pro game, things like this are going to happen. He won in this. He lost in the decision after being hyped up in a really big debut, and it is just unfortunately, another knock to pretty much how, as vaunted as they are in amateurs, as illustrious as they are in amateurs, how pretty much how far back the Cuban system is compared to almost the rest of the world. Even other countries that had blockades eventually had to relent and get their fighters prepared for the Olympics. And not only the Olympics, to prepare for the pro game. Cuba right now is probably like one of the lone outliers. I could probably think of a couple, probably China in a way. But Cuba seems to be the main country that is hell-bent on not trying to prepare their areas. Now, I get it, the affecting and everything, but you can't have this, because right now, what the main question you can ask is, if you have here somebody that is from Cuba, high amateur background, you almost automatically now have to assume that they are not gonna do as good in the pros as they did in the amateurs, because they never were able to make the adjustment. And Ramirez looked like he wasn't making the adjustments at the time, but he does have a little bit of time to prepare, and it's not a knock on him. We have to prepare. It's not a knock on him. It doesn't matter if your first month is a loss. Like Gail always mentions when it comes to Orlando Salido, I think his first fight was a loss. Bernard Hopkins' first fight was a loss. And Salido is one of the, and we know Salido was always not became a crowd favorite, and we know the legacy that Bernard Hopkins has. So I would put him a little bit now. As far as Sosa, good win by Sosa. Like, I agree with Gail. He did save that card after the whole Frampton's fiasco. But I would probably say at this stage in the featherweight 130-pound picture, he is likely you could say a mixture between a fringe contender and a good gatekeeper right now. Because I would have, like I said, at 26 pounds, I want to put him against Oscar Valdez right now, even with Oscar Valdez going into it. Maybe Gary Russell Jr. if he ever gets off his 1-year fight hiatus. And hell no, I'm not putting him against Leo Santa Cruz. And hell no, I'm not putting him against Josh Warranted. So he's in that scope in the area, but it's a good one to have. Everybody becomes that sooner or later if you're a really good fighter. You become that gatekeeper to see if other guys are more than ready to take the next step. We know Mauricio Herrera has become and became that. We know in many ways John Pascal became that. So it's a good career to have. We know Gabe Rosado became that. So it's a pretty good show for Sosa. He did save the card. I don't see much of it as far as like a title picture. Not with the division the way it is, whether it's like 126 or 130.
I see Gus from Corruption and Boxing has joined us. First and foremost, I want to say publicly here, shout out to you, Gus, on suggesting StreamYard as a good in terms of a live stream. I like it so far. I like it a lot so far. We're talking about Robeisy Ramirez, his surprising loss to Adan Gonzalez, excuse me, and we're also talking Jason Sosa and his stoppage win. Any comments on those fights?
Haven't seen any of those fights, Mike. How's my audio, by the way?
Oh, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Since you have, go ahead.
Ramirez. I didn't see the fight, Mike, but I heard a lot of reports about Ramirez. I think he spent a little bit too much time in the hairdressers as opposed to brushing up his professional technique, from what I'm hearing, and making a lot of excuses with the knockdown and the decision, etc. So, yeah, that was a massive surprise to me.
Um, you didn't see the Sosa fight either, so I want to move on to the other fight in the recap and the rundown of the boxing over the past weekend. Give me a quick second here. Vergil Ortiz Jr., a prospect I really like at the 140, 147-pound division. He's recently said he's moving up to welterweight, and he's going to stay there. That's going to be his future. He fought in his hometown in Texas, fighter by the name of Antonio Orozco. Good test for him. He ended up scoring a 8th-round stoppage. I'll go to you on this one, Jacob. I really like the more I see of Ortiz Jr., the more I like him. I've said in the past that I think he's the best prospect on the Golden Boy stable. If Ramirez was maybe a bit of the unwarranted hype, given all the talk about him heading into his pro debut, Ortiz Jr., he's legit, in my opinion. He's the genuine article. He's going to be a serious threat to win a world title sooner than later. He started off a little bit slow, a little bit defensive, trying to survey the scene. But in around five, in a round, the fifth, sixth round, you can really see him start to settle down, start to sit down on his punches, land with some serious power, and the way he ended the matters was terrific. Uh, outstanding prospect slash contender, in my opinion, Jacob.
Yeah, talking about this last week, I hadn't seen enough of him. This was to me the test, the kind of the eye test to see, because he beat Herrera, but Herrera is not the fighter that he was, and so I didn't have as much stock into that. But after Orozco, I knew was going to be a decent challenge and a big step up. And I agree with you. I think Golden Boy, forget this fucking Ryan Garcia kid. They should be putting their money on this guy. He's technically I think he's a very sound fighter. He he has a he has pretty good defense. He keeps his hands up. He has great power, I think, in both hands. He goes to the body. He goes to the head. He counters well. He's got some decent speed. He moves his feet well. So he kind of has like all the tools, I think, and him being so young. But I disagree with you though on the start. I think he come out to a really fast start. He almost knocked Orozco. I think he had him in the corner. He almost knocked. I thought he was going to knock him out.
Yeah, I said it because at times he seems to back off where he could have finished him. Where he could have finished him right there.
Well, I think that's a boxing IQ though. I think he was being smart because we've seen people, gas out, or they go for the kill early, and against a a guy like Orozco who's been in some tough fights and he'd only lost the one time. He was gonna come with his A game, and I think that was smart for him to kind of back off and not blow it, not blow his load, so to speak, and just be smart about it. He did do another interesting thing where he would put himself on the ropes and kind of look for counters. And I think Orozco's corner was telling him like, hey, if he's gonna put himself on the ropes, that's good for us. Like just start teeing off on him. But he was really timing Orozco well and being able to land some shots. I did give Orozco, I think, 1 or 2 rounds on the fight. I thought he had a couple good rounds, but eventually he just broke down Orozco, and he once he had him hurt, it was as good as done. And very impressed with this kid. I hope Golden Boy, with all the troubles that they're going through right now with their named fighters, I hope they invest in this kid because I think he's for real.
I'll go to you, Gus, and then you can follow up, Gail and Daniel. I don't know if you saw the fight, but you talked about Ortiz uh, here on Pound for Pound in the past. I believe you talked about him on your platform as well. Uh, you're highly impressed by what he by you highly impressed by him. If you were able to see the fights, your thoughts on the fight itself. If you were not, your reaction to the win over Orozco, who was I believe 26-1, 28-1 coming in. So based on resume and on record, uh, Oro- uh, Orozco was his first test, and he passed with flying colors. Are you there, Gus? I'll go to you. I'll go to you, Gail. Then I don't think I hear Gus. Your thoughts on the win over Orozco?
Really impressive. Jacob, I couldn't agree with you more strongly. Golden Boy should be throwing all of its promotional weight behind Vergil Ortiz Jr. There is no longer any reason to believe he isn't the real deal. Antonio Orozco was up till Mauricio Herrera, the best opponent he'd ever faced, 28-1. And let's all remind ourselves the one was his fight last December or September against Jose Ramirez. And Orozco was down several times in that fight, but he made it to the final bell. He had never been stopped. And Ramirez gave him a hell of a fight, and Orozco gave him a hell of a fight back. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Ortiz handled this, having seen what Orozco did up against Ramirez. And you're right, Ortiz got very excited and started pouring out energy in that first round. But he said after the fight, he thought to himself, I need to calm down. I need to just calm down for a little bit. This guy is not necessarily going anywhere anytime soon. So he did. He settled down. He started smartly working him to the body, to the head. Ortiz Jr. has developed a really tasty array of punches. He can land and he'd throw and land just about any style of punch. And on Saturday, the weapon turned out to be the uppercut because Orozco had decided the only way I've got a chance with this guy, I'm pretty tough. I can take a shot. I've never been down. I cannot stand out at the end of his range and get tagged. I need to crowd him so he can't unload on me. And his trainer, Carlos Barragan, was telling him exactly that in the corner. If he wants to let you back him up against the ropes and you want to tee off, go for it. And that was proving successful. I mean, as far as it went, Orozco did have a couple of good rounds, and you had to start thinking, okay, Ortiz had only been past the fourth round, I think, once. And he's had a lot of 1, 2, 3 round knockouts. So it looked like maybe we'd get a sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th round out of this. But nah. Nah, it didn't happen. And, Orozco just, he got hit by 2 uppercuts in a row. He managed to, get to his feet. He hung in there, but this kid just has freaky huge power, and he puts it right on target. He, for him to have the presence of mind to be able to say to himself after the start of the fight, I need to calm down and slow my roll, and then do it and deliver in front of his hometown, probably sold 3/4 of the seats out there all by himself. That's a lot. He's 21 years old. And let's compare him to Ryan Garcia for just a second. There is no comparison.
Yeah, you stole my words. I was going to say there's not a comparison.
Ryan
He's about to
Garcia,
throw up.
yeah, Ryan Garcia, I mean, and we could trash poor Ryan Garcia, pretty boy, the Justin Bieber of boxing, this and that. I do not want to show any level of disrespect towards Ryan Garcia. Um, he is the kind of boxer that we do need in the sport. He is flashy. He's entertaining. He's got a massive social media following. There have been other boxers in history who are more about the fan following and the publicity necessarily than the skills in the ring. That's okay. Guys like Ryan can keep the sport healthy too. But it's true skilled athletic talents like Ortiz that take it into the deep water and last for years and years. But make no mistake, Golden Boy right now is on shaky footing, and it needs both of these young men to appeal to their audiences, stay in their lane, and do what they need to do. Until they figure out what the heck's going on with Canelo and what their business model is. And we could talk about that also in the previews as we saw them announce the Munguia Olate fight. It was a very interesting situation yesterday.
I'll go to you, Daniel, and then you guys, your thoughts on Ortiz win over Orozco.
This kid has the potential to be special. He showed a lot of patience when he wasn't able to get him out in the fourth. And Orozco, you have to give it to him. He's tough, dude. He took a lot of body shots from Vergil in the lead up to that. But Vergil showed something in this fight. And maybe it's because, like I said, like we mentioned it, this is his best test to date. I mentioned it last week. This is his best test to date. He showed that he has the instinct that when he needs to finish it, he finishes it. And it wasn't a situation like, for example, where Orozco just laid down. Like you saw the first two knockdowns, he was kicking himself that he got knocked down. It was only after the third one where he said it makes sense for me not to get up. And you have to also take into account how disappointed Vergil actually was with his own performance in the post-fight interview. He said he didn't like it. Like he thought he could get him out sooner.
That's a really good point, Daniel. He said, I'm very disappointed. I think he said he gave himself a B- or a C. Maybe he said a C-.
A C-, yep.
I mean, that's just, in his mind, barely passing. That's exactly what you want. That's exactly what you want, a guy that's that hard on himself. I mean, he didn't even need to wait, to hear any trainer feedback, anybody else, like, yeah, I screwed this up, but I'll do better next time. Really? Yeah. 14-0 with 14 knockouts. What are we worrying about right now?
Yeah, and let's not even forget this. Like I said, and this is for Golden Boy's eyes too. He shows he's loyal. Like he went out of his way to thank the matchmakers. He went out of his way to thank Oscar, even though Oscar, I don't think, was there.
Oscar was not there. However, Eric Gomez, who really has taken the reins right now, who does some of the matchmaking, Roberto Diaz does most of it, but it was Eric who was in his field of vision during that post-fight interview, and he immediately turned around to thank him. And that's what young rising talent in any business needs to do, is acknowledge the people helping them climb the ladder, and he did that. And that goes a long way.
That was an indirect dig at Canelo Alvarez, let's face it.
I know. We can understand it. We understand where that falls into it, but like I said, it shows, like I said, level of loyalty, and we know it was a little dig towards Canelo, but
Well, let me ask you this, Gus. Don't you, even more so than Canelo, given what we just talked about, don't you think the dig might have also been directed more at his stablemate, Mr. Glamour Boy Ryan Garcia?
The way I gauged it, I thought it was definitely calibrated towards Alvarez.
Well, Ryan Garcia has been in the main event of one of these smaller regional cards long before Ortiz was. So I wonder if they've got a little. I hope there's some healthy rivalry going on there. I hope it doesn't become toxic.
Yeah, but it also does show, like I said, that maybe like Golden Boy, it shows how much faith Golden Boy has. We know we talked about like Golden Boy has to put all the eggs in the basket. Think about in the lightweight division who Ryan Garcia has been paired up against. And now think about who in the welterweight division, granted 140, 147, what Golden Boy is doing Vergil Ortiz. They know that that Vergil's probably obviously the more ready of the two. And they're showing it. Whether it can lead anything thanks to this little divide that we have between obviously our Heyman fighters and almost everybody else outside of Bud Crawford. We're going to see where this shapes up, but it was a great step for Vergil. You knew the crowd was electric, and I like said better things for this kid to continue, because if you're going to be a welterweight, you're going to be facing some dogs.
I'll go back to you, Gus. If you were able to see the fight, your reaction to it. If not, your thoughts on Ortiz, who you talked about before here on Pound for Pound Box Report, and I believe you talked about him as well as on your platform.
Yeah, Mike. Sorry about that before. Just having some trouble. Is my audio okay again?
Yeah, it's fine.
Excellent. With Ortiz's performance this time, Mike, for me, what was important to deduce from a prodigious sort of young prospect was, number one, his ability, his defensive ability up against a pressure fighter who is throwing a hell of a lot of punches. So I was specifically looking at his ability to, absorb the shots, operate behind a tight guard. So looking at his fundamentals, and what was encouraging for me was his ability to fight on the back foot. Not being over reckless with his defense, knowing that he had the advantage in power, because Orozco, specifically, he's pulled at 140 pounds, more of a nutritional sort of puncher. So Ortiz definitely had the power in the fight. So the question was, how much the weaknesses he would show up against a fighter who would potentially throw more punches than him, and he would use that 3/4 left hook, knowing that Orozco was ducking to get underneath to slip the jab, and he would throw that loop into the 3/4 hook, which was landing, and Orozco was actually landing a lot of punches. So I guess that was part of Ortiz's criticism of his performance to a certain extent, because he was getting hit with a lot of punches. But to me, I wouldn't be that critical, Mike, because he did a good job. When he needed to block the punches, operate behind a tight guard, he would. Then he would find one or two quick, good counters, certainly with the straight left hand, left cross sometimes, and then come back with the body shots as well. So single punches, he would hurt Orozco, who was wobbling in round two. So you could see the power was clearly there. It was more a case of when and how he would do it. Clearly, he wanted the better rounds, and he wanted to entertain his home crowd. And those are also, good aspects, because, this is prize fighting at the end of the day. So, he could have taken Orozco out of his misery a lot earlier, but he wanted to showcase, get a few rounds in, and he did that. And very destructive on the finish. I like that as well. You know, he's not playing around with his opponents when they're hurt, which is good as well. You know, he's got to have that killer instinct if he's going to stay at 147 pounds. So a good test, Mike. And I think Golden Boy, as I've talked to before, they always put their prospects in tough fights. It is kill or be killed with their prospects, and I like that sort of process of elimination. So good test, carving up a good resume for a young 21-year-old. But there's still time, Mike. You know, I don't think there's any need for him to be worrying about any world title shots at the moment, which is difficult enough anyway, given that the PBC are pretty much holding all of the belts. So that's an opportunity for them to, you know, develop him a lot more. I think he's had problems with southpaws, Mike, going back. You know, in his third or fourth fight, a southpaw gave him a bit of trouble, although he eventually knocked him out. So there's still certain styles he can gain that sort of acclamation with. But all in all, it was an excellent performance.
In my opinion, stateside at least, I think Ortiz Jr. and Boots Ennis are the top welterweight prospects out there. I think there's another one. I can't remember what country in Europe, Gus. You think highly of, but
there's a welterweight called Busputin who I think he's a monster, Mike, an absolute killer at 147. I don't think a lot of people want to mess around with him, but 147 has got a lot. You know, the Uzbek fighter Shakram Gisev, who I'm heavy with, he's very good. Daniel Yelusianov from Kazakhstan, also very good. So it's a real stacked division.
Indeed. And you're right. At the end of the day, as promising as he looks, as promising as he is as a prospect, there's no need to rush him. He's only 21 years old. He's still got some time. You can give him a couple of years at least before you push him up into the title landscape, or at least let the big dogs, the Spence, the Crawfords, the Porters, the Garcias, the Pacquiaos, let them fight each other and inflict some damage on them before you step in there, before you step Ortiz in there. He has time. He certainly has time. But
and
so far,
pray to God that Subriel Matisse doesn't come up to 147.
So yeah, at the very least, based on what we've seen so far, he looks to be the goods. His potential is seems to be limited. I like what he does. He's an all-around complete fighter, offensively, defensively, head and body. Head power to the head and body, good solid defense. So the potential is there. Certainly, the potential is there. Let's get into some news here. A lot of news here. First off, go to the heavyweight division, and whoever wants to respond to this, please do. What do you make of this Ruiz Joshua saga? Eddie Hearn puts together a press conference. Neither Joshua or Ruiz is there. Announces that the rematch is going to happen. It's going to happen in Saudi Arabia. Ruiz responds today with the Instagram video, basically saying, "No, I haven't agreed to anything. I'm not fighting in Saudi Arabia. I still question whether we know the rematch is going to happen, but I still have serious question whether it's going to end up in Saudi Arabia in December." To anyone here in the chat here, what do you make of all of this?
Ladies first.
Where to start? This could be an entire special edition of the show. And the truth is, what we're hearing right now is hard to ground. It's hard to ground and verify a lot of the information. Who's signed what? What was the real meaning of this announcement, this site announcement? Eddie Hearn will tell you that was never meant to be a full-blown fight card announcement news conference. We were just merely telling you about the site deal. No, that's nobody believes that for a second. However, I do wonder if Hearn wasn't testing the political and social waters by doing this, by announcing the site to see what sort of reaction he got. Clearly, the money is very, very tempting, no matter how bad an idea it is. You know, promoters are in the business to make money. The more money they make, the more everybody makes. I get that. And without the money infusing boxing, nothing would happen. Nothing would take place. But I think the blowback from multiple directions has been far worse than he could have ever imagined. First of all, let's talk about the whole issue of sports washing. The fact that you have a political regime with a lot of very serious problems that would certainly affect those involved in boxing in many ways. And I speak from a unique prism as a serious, credentialed, female sports writing journalist. I hit a lot of very troublesome categories. There's no way in hell I can cross the border of Saudi Arabia and think I could do my job safely. And I don't really want to. A lot of bad things happen to American journalists, let alone female American journalists, let alone female sports writing American journalists. I think that was all very nice and grand that Eddie Hearn or somebody in his retinue pointed out that, for this event, women would be allowed in the stadium. Well, isn't that nice? Yeah, the whole thing is so problematic. It's a small venue. No fans can travel realistically. To me, there's only two positives at all to this. One, at least the deal got made and there's a lot of money to spread around. Number two, of all the places the fight could happen, one of the places that Ruiz would have an advantage is Saudi Arabia because he comes from a desert. This is the fucking desert. It's hot. I don't care what time of year it is. I think he'd probably be more at home and acclimated than Joshua. But that is a stretch. This whole thing is so head scratching. And my diatribe to start this discussion is just barely even scratched the surface.
Just from a level of geopolitics, Daniel, uh, this is not the best look in the world. Just because you put a lot of money on the table doesn't mean it overweighs all the overlying factors, the arbitrary factors of having the fight at that locale. Gail mentioned some of the issues. There are other issues in which I'm not really willing to go there at this particular time. Yeah. Again, I question whether we know the rematch is going to happen. I seriously question whether the fight is going to happen there.
I think, Mike, if you're not willing to step in, I'll gladly dive into that area. Whoever is watching, and if you haven't heard of this or you haven't been under a rock, look up the name Jamal Khashoggi for a little bit.
Yeah.
In case for the people that don't know, in case the cliff notes of it, he was unfortunately a Washington Post columnist from Saudi Arabia who was critical of the current Saudi regime under the current Crown Prince, who I'm just going to say his initials are MBS. And to put it short, Khashoggi one day went into the Saudi embassy in Turkey, in Istanbul, and has never come out. And this is the main issue that the Saudi government is dealing with. Now, it hasn't stopped other companies before, especially when they throw a lot of money. Like we mentioned, WWE actually had a chance to actually do the right thing and say no to Saudi Arabia money after this came out, but it's too much money in its contract, so they're stuck there for a couple of years. And we have to also look into this when it comes to Saudi Arabia in general, when it comes to boxing. This is not the first foray as far as into it. Remember, they were the proposed site of the first finals of the World Boxing Super Series until, Russian money outweighed them, particularly when it came to Usyk. That in itself should just tell you, okay, this is just a money issue. But this is also where we're going to place factors into it. Apparently, the only person that was negotiating any aspects of this was Eddie Hearn. Not Joshua's camp, not Ruiz's camp, not Al Heyman, just Eddie Hearn. And I have a feeling, and it's obvious what he's trying to do. He was trying to pull a leverage move. Trying to put a press conference and saying, I picked the location, you're just going to have to eat it. The problem, though, is Ruiz obviously can say no, which he did. And second of all, like Gail mentioned, this is going to be a pop-up stadium, what they want to do. And if we're gauging this, like the type of audience that you're going to get, let's say from now the 3 WWE shows that you've had in Saudi Arabia, Greatest Royal Rumble, Crown Jewel, and Super Showdown, it isn't exactly an audience that you could say is actually passionate about what they watch. They know what it is. They will be entertained. But it's not the fans you want to see, whether you're Anthony Joshua or Andy Ruiz. There's that factor into it. What's gonna be really, really rocking this whole scenario is, and I think the Zone was smart when they did the advertisement, not to actually put a date and location on this, is what's going to be dangerous is going to be the network fight. Because you don't think that Fox wants in on this? The heavyweight championship of the world? With one fighter that's to the PBC having the belts? And possibly if everything goes through with Luis Ortiz and he does what he's supposed to do, one Mr. Deontay Wilder sitting ringside on a PBC on Fox pay-per-view, they're going to fight for that more than likely now. Because the way this has shaped up pretty much has been Eddie Hearn never thinking about the other possibility. Eddie Hearn just assume, okay, we'll put a rematch clause because it's nice to put a rematch clause. Joshua will win, and I don't have to worry about this one. And if you happen to do win, we'll just say, it's going to be in Wembley. And expecting Andy to face, at least negotiating table, the same Andy Ruiz, who was a late substitution, rather than the Andy Ruiz who has the 3 belts that Joshua used to have. It doesn't look like Eddie Hearn really has a plan B, and he's getting beat up all over the place for this. Like I said, it was smart for Joshua not to show up to this.
Well, it's smart for him not to show up and not to say anything at all right now.
Yeah.
Keep quiet.
Yeah, this is a situation where you have to be quiet. This is a situation where Eddie Hearn is digging.
I mean, I know he's your promoter and all, but no, he's digging his own grave. Let him dig it.
Yeah, you have to dig it into it, and we have to remember The deal that Eddie Hearn built with the zone when it came to matching was built on the preface of Anthony Joshua. And if Joshua isn't happy in the situation, and you can see a situation where he's not happy, he's just not as I would say passionate as Canelo is about voicing his opinion. He still can put out little feelers that says, "I'm not really good in this situation." He hasn't. He's kept it so quiet, smart. The only thing you can think that you can say backfires is that you can try to spin this as Ruiz trying to duck Joshua. He knows his fight is. He knows his win is a fluke. He doesn't really want to fight again. That's what some British boxing fans are doing, like the most ardent ones. But this is gonna be a big mess because I I I do believe the match is gonna happen this year. I'm heavily betting though it's not gonna be in Saudi Arabia because we kind of see how boxing events in Saudi Arabia has shaped up with the World Boxing Super Series and how that tournament's been in recent turmoil. So this is just a big dumpster fire.
Yeah, I'll go to you, Jacob. Your thoughts on all of this. Again, made the announcement, but yeah, this announcement, quote unquote, has been clouded in controversy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much more to add. I mean, I want to see the fight because I want to see if Joshua's gonna bounce back or if he's you know, he just isn't who I thought he was. But it seems like I think Andy Ruiz is also talking about money. I think he's gonna get paid 9 million for this fight, but he wants more. But I'm not sure how that works with the contract when they do a rematch clause, and if certain things are like kind of set already, and if that can be negotiated. Um, but he's kind of being smart about it in the sense that he's the three belt champion, and he can he has something that everybody wants. He has the biggest pieces of the pie, so he can throw his weight around. He punched in his lottery ticket, and so now he's not gonna waste it. So I think he's being smart about that. Because I mean, there is a chance that he can lose. Of course, it's heavyweight boxing. But as far as the site, like I know he wanted a neutral site because they were want to do it in the UK. Um, and I think I guess it's considered a neutral site, but it's not the best for because of certain things in that region. It's not the best for a lot of different reasons. So um, I don't know. I hope they figure this out because I want to see these guys fight. I'd rather see you guys fight than argue over where the fight's going to be. Um, I would say to Ruiz, you don't really need a. I don't know if he really needs a neutral site because if he believes in himself enough and he thinks he's just going to repeat what happened, before and knock Joshua out, then it's not going to go to the card, so it's not going to make a difference. Whether you know if he knocks this guy out, then it's game over. So do you really need that that neutral site? If you think you're going to do what you did in the first fight. So I don't know, a lot of politics in here. Hopefully we see the fight, and then whoever wins the fight, we hope I see the big unification fight with Wilder. But this is boxing.
there, Mike?
Sorry, guys. I was disconnected there for a quick second. I'll go to you, Gus. Uh, you don't mind calling folks behind the scenes, sectioning bodies, promoters, managers, or whatever to find out the real scoop. So I'm really interested in your observation, your reaction to what went down this past week. All I've heard throughout that Cardiff was the most likely destination for this fight, and then all of a sudden you see Hearn make this announcement that this fight is going to happen in Saudi Arabia. I'm not mad at Ruiz saying no because even though he's obligated to fight Joshua again, as soon as Joshua exercised the rematch clause, that's it. Ruiz has to fight him. But for him to basically say, I'm the champ here, and even though I'm obligated to fight you, that doesn't mean I have to kowtow to any and everything you want, Eddie Hearn. And while I mentioned that Joshua hasn't said anything, Gus, he's kept quiet for the most part. However, Joshua dropped a video on YouTube and called me conspiratorial, but I don't find it a coincidence that in the video he dropped, he talked about, in fact, fighters' rights and how fighters are not taught like financial literacy. They're not taught how to deal with the trappings of the game. They're not taught to how to deal with
Mike, I think you cut off a bit.
Okay, guys, I'm sorry I was lost. My connection was I got disconnected again. I'll go back to you, Gus. What I was saying was that you're one to make phone calls and to talk to people to find out the real scoop. Uh, um, I'm not mad at Ruiz for saying no, even though he's basically obligated to fight him. And I find no coincidence, though Joshua hasn't really technically said anything about having any issues with Hearn. I don't find it coincidence that within the video that he recently dropped on YouTube on his channel, he basically talked about fighters' rights and how they're not protected. That could be to those who may be conspiratorial, like I a little bit of side language that he may not be entirely happy with Hearn. So, what do you make of all this this announcement and all the controversies that ensued afterwards?
I think the last point you made, Mike, is perennial. Now, first things first. When was the last time you saw a fight of this magnitude without the fighters being present at the announcement of the fight? Now, I can't believe that 90% of people on YouTube, etc., started releasing videos about the fight. I knew straight away from that position that there's no way that Andy or Ruiz has certainly agreed, to the fight, because otherwise both fighters would be present. So that's why I didn't, rush the gun with, putting out any sort of videos. But now, Mike, I've been looking at analyzing Eddie Hearn and matchroom boxing for a very, very long time now. Eddie Hearn is a promoter with no morals. He's got no duty of care to his fighters, and he's got no ethics. Now, this is a promoter who thinks it's perfectly acceptable not to advise the away fighter that the home fighter has failed a drug test. He thinks it's perfect. That's the sort of morals that he exemplifies. Now, when you look at the relationship in the UK between sort of Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren now, Eddie Hearn has transitioned into boxing from being on the PGA Tour. He was never a boxing guy, Mike. Frank Warren is a boxing guy. He historically has brought fighters from nowhere took him to English, Southern area, British, European, Commonwealth, world. He's a boxing man. Eddie Hearn clearly isn't. He's simply, his proclivity is profits and money. And I think it's potentially a catastrophic decision, Mike, to put the fight in Saudi Arabia, because Eddie Hearn's responsibility has to be to try and maximize Anthony Joshua's opportunity of reclaiming the world heavyweight titles. Now, Joshua before has already indicated that he was very reticent about fighting away. If you remember, after the Joseph Parker fight, there was questions after the fight whether, he would fight in the States, and he made an indication there that why should I go to the United States? We've got a great thing here. And now the smart decision, Mike, would be to put the fight in the UK. Eddie Hearn doesn't need to worry about Joshua's legacy or whatever else. He has to try and maximize Joshua's, the odds in his favor. And clearly it's no coincidence that Joshua's first fight away from home and he gets brutally knocked out. Clearly he's not comfortable fighting away from home. And there was some problems in the amateurs when he went to Baku as well. He had problems fighting away from home. So that could be a sort of a mental prognosis. But now Eddie Hearn is clearly gone for a massive 35, 40 million, because Matchroom they've got a failing business model, Mike. Now he's got a bit of a dilemma. He's got no youth talent. He's invested in youth talent, but trust me, all of them are absolutely rubbish. He's conflict of interest with DAZN. Now he's taking UK fighters and putting them on the DAZN cards in the United States. So Joshua felt he had an obligation of fighting in New York. I think it was more of a favor to Eddie Hearn and to DAZN to say, look, Eddie Hearn has made me a multi-millionaire, a world champion. So I think he felt a bit of an obligation to say, look, they need a bit of traction in the United States. So, okay, I'll fight on DAZN and we'll go to Madison Square Garden. It's got nothing to do with him trying to emulate great fighters in the past. Ignore all of that nonsense. I think it was an obligation, to gain, so that they can gain some traction in the United States. And it backfired on him. His preparation was very bad. He's making a lot of excuses now. But his loss is more to do with sort of protracted defensive and technical deficiencies that have never, ever been remediated. And Eddie Hearn has to be instrumental in that as well. He's got to try and coordinate, who Joshua is sparring with, his trainers, but he's done none of that. He's just obsessed with the margin, the profit line, etc., Mike. And Eddie Hearn has done that all along. Look at the careers of some of the other fighters, Mike. Kell Brook, for example. Eddie Hearn should have never fed Kell Brook to Gennady Golovkin. If you recall, I was very, very critical of that fight here, and I said that Kell Brook would get badly hurt, and so it did, and that's effectively ended his career. And you look at some of his other fighters, Mike. Dave Allen, for example. He had no amateur experience. He was predominantly a sparring partner. And what did Eddie Hearn do? He fed him to Dillian White. He fed him to Luis Ortiz, who split his mouth and his tongue open. And he got beaten up by David Price. And who is he going to feed him to on the Luke Campbell undercard? To Alexander Povetkin.
Povetkin, yeah.
That's Eddie Hearn for you, Mike. He's got absolutely no responsibility, duty of care to his fighter. This guy is a deplorable, wretched animal. And I think Matchroom Boxing UK is a failing model, Mike. And I think MTK Global, we've got a very good business model. I think eventually Sky Sports are going to revoke Sky's exclusive promotional deal on Sky Sports. And I think they're going to sign MTK Global, who are doing a great job signing a lot of good young fighters. They've got a very good management company. And I think, Eddie Hearn, this ship, Mike, is sick badly.
I just don't understand, folks, how Hearn the previous week, a couple of weeks ago, following Dillian White's win, uh, with an asterisk now, given uh, the controversy around the drug test. He was on Steve Bunt's podcast saying that Cardiff was the likely destination for the rematch between Ruiz Joshua. And now he turns around this week and says Saudi Arabia. I don't get it. I need an explanation.
According to Eddie Hearn, he said that the Saudis have first approached him only 2 weeks ago about potentially sort of brokering a fight in the Middle East. So, but Eddie Hearn, we know is a we know he's a pathological liar, Mike. So I wouldn't.
Is there any truth though to? I've heard that Ruiz. So if they were going to have it in the UK, that Ruiz could also say, "No, I want it on neutral ground, and I'm not going to fight in the UK." So
We don't really know the contract is the key aspect, and I'm not party to the contract. There must be some sort of stipulations, conditions, and there must be some sort of exit clauses as to what Andy Ruiz can exercise. And I'm sure Al Heyman is definitely having some leverage on this matter. I don't think Al Heyman clearly wanted it in the UK. But I don't know, Jacob. It's very hard to gauge without even reading the contract or having visibility of it.
Going to the chat room here. What you need said that in response to the comments about Hearn, he said that Hearn just signed Billy Joe Saunders. So we'll talk about that shortly. Lisa said that Hearn and Warren are both shiesty. She asked a question for everybody here in the chat regarding to Joshua specifically. Her question was that she says she don't trust anyone in boxing in the chat. She says the question she asked for everyone here is that why are people saying that Joshua was done after losing one fight? You're
I'll take this one, Mike, because you might cut off a little bit. It's part of the whole mixture, this whole culture that has developed, thanks in large part to Floyd and other fighters who have made it their mission to protect the O on the loss column at all costs. To the point where it has become almost accepted knowledge among casuals that if you get a loss, you're automatically washed up. Because they'll easily point out Floyd didn't get a loss. That's that aspect of it. And what happens particularly with Joshua is that the commodity that Joshua presents as far as the package, like the guy's big, the guy is built, he's charismatic, and if he had that record, I said with the O, it's a perfect selling tool. You suddenly take that O and you put it to a 1. He doesn't look as shiny anymore. And then suddenly people want to be like, oh, he had a loss, he's gone through a lot. People start digging. They might point out some of his past, like his police record with the drugs. And there's also the factor that thanks to the Dillian White situation, you also have this aura where maybe UK fighters want to fight in the UK because they may get away with something that they probably wouldn't be able to get away with if the fight was in the US. And I forgot who it was. I think I forgot who it was. I think it probably was Big Baby. And this is the irony. Big Baby's the one saying this. The man who failed how many drug tests in the quickest succession of time. Pointing out, like, if Joshua's fighting the UK, you're going to see a completely different Joshua.
that was Dylan White who said that, actually.
Oh, Okay, I thought it was Big Baby, but either way, like I said, the irony, Dillian White, the guy who apparently failed the test, and the British didn't even bother to tell his opponent. That's the aspect of it. Why the O is probably a little bit tainted now, and people dig into it, but it's mainly just the way boxing has been marketed now, thanks like I said, in large part to people like Floyd. That the only way that you can tell he's a good fighter is if he has an O in his record in the loss column. If he doesn't have an O in the loss column, he's not that good.
Um, what you need mentioned that in reaction to this discussion and to Gus' comments about Eddie Hearn, he said that Hearn recently signed Billy Joe Saunders. However, first of all, shout out to Plan Plot Strategize and Rival Boxing. Thanks for listening, fellas. Plan Plot said he just got here. Um, the comment is from him. To Gail's point, earlier point, what would be the benefit of having the Ruiz versus Joshua rematch in Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia is a country known for its human rights violations. Women barely have rights there, and yeah, that spoke to Gail's point earlier. That's why she said, as a woman boxing journalist, she has major issues with the fight there. Uh, Going back to the Billy Joe Saunders thing, Gus, I want your reaction to the signing of um, uh, the Hearn signing of Billy Joe Saunders. Okay, he signed him. My issue is the motive. Billy Joe Saunders, Callum Smith recently said no to a fight him unification there. I don't care if Billy Joe Saunders is a quote unquote super middleweight champion. He still has eyes on the middleweight division. He still has eyes on Canelo and Golovkin. That's the real reason he left Warren for Hearn, and that's the real reason. However, once they signed him, what's the first fight Warren that Hearn is talking about? A rematch with Chris Eubank Jr.? Who wants to see that? Your thoughts, Gus?
You, I'll look at it from a different angle, Mike, if it's okay. I mean, like Frank Warren, I think Frank Warren did a fantastic job with Billy Joe Saunders, and it reinforces what I said before. He signed him as an 18-year-old from the Olympics, signed him simultaneously with James DeGale and Frankie Gavin, and he follows that specific blueprint of English, Southern area, British, European, Commonwealth, and world, and he did that with Billy Joe. Two division world champions. So I think Frank Warren did a fantastic job. Billy Joe Saunders didn't maximize his potential under Frank Warren through his ill discipline, his his lack of dedication. We know he clearly doesn't like it. He's had a few sort of injury problems, etc. But Frank Warren was definitely trying to make the right fights, and even as a super middleweight now, he submitted an offer to the rival promoters. So, but all in all, Mike, Frank Warren has signed 3 or 4 fantastic fighters. One of them, like Dennis McCann, who's a young fighter. So he signed 2 other fighters. I've written them down, but they're very young, like 7 times sort of national champion, ABA champion. So Frank Warren is a real boxing man. So I don't think Frank is too bothered. He's got a fantastic 15 or 16 young good fighters. So, but it also emphasizes what I was saying about Eddie Hearn. He doesn't know anything about youth talent. The fighters he's signed, a lot of them, if you look at it, Mike, all of these Joe Caldinas and Ted Cheesemans, etc., they've got no ability to fight on the back foot. They've got no defensive ability. Lewis Ritson and all of them have been beaten recently, Mike. So it just shows that these guys are not being schooled. It's only the European young European fighters that he signed, like Israel Madrimov and fighters like that, who have got real pedigree, but they're sort of co-promotion with the world of boxing. So there's no indigenous young talent that Eddie Hearn has invested in. Maybe people like Felix Cash, but so with Billy Joe, Mike, I don't know. I think it's going to be a frustrating. Eddie Hearn is just desperate, as I said, for traction with the zone. I think he's desperate to make a fight with Callum Smith. I guess it's the right stable. There's going to be plenty of fighters around middleweight and super middleweight who we can get in the ring with. But going backwards to a Chris Eubank Jr. is just, to me, Mike, that just defies belief and stupidity. Chris has got to deal with Al Heyman on ITV. Billy Joe will be specifically on Sky Sports and on the Zone. So I don't understand that, that type of matchmaking. Clearly, he's got to make a fight with Callum Smith. Smith, who doesn't have a lot of time left at 168 pounds. You'd think that's a unification that's easy to make. There'll be money. You can have it in the UK. I'm sure you get a sizable sort of crowd, whether it's in Liverpool or at the O2 Arena. So I'm not surprised at all, Mike, that Frank Warren, jettisoned Saunders or was able to let him go so easily. I think he's got so many better. I think he's realised that Billy Saunders is probably reached his peak now. There's not a lot more he can do with him, and he's got a lot of young fighters who's going to carry on following that great blueprint that he's carved out for the last 30 years.
Been a while since we heard from Gail, so we'll hear a reaction to Billy Joe Saunders signing with moving from Frank Warren to Eddie Hearn.
Oh, Billy Joe, he is the boxing definition of a sellout. What a shame. He's operated this way his whole career, chasing the money without having to risk much. So he figures, there probably is a certain appetite for a Eubank Jr. rematch, and that gives him enough money to satisfy himself without risking a whole lot. If he really had wanted a lot of these other fights, they would have happened by now. He cannot hide behind promoter issues or political issues or this problem or that problem. Most of the problems he can find clearly by looking in the mirror. So none of us buy that BS coming from BJS. And if that's all he truly has an ambition to do is earn himself a nice paycheck with a domestic fight that, frankly, would probably sell perfectly fine, that the rest of the world does not give a shit about and barely gave a shit about the first time. Have at it. I doesn't mean I need to pay attention or be a part of it. And, eventually acts like this get old. And somebody like Saunders, is frequently the last one to figure it out and then looks around and thinks, what the hell happened? Well, buddy, you did it to yourself. Part of the reason we get so excited seeing a young rising star like Vergil Ortiz is he seems absolutely a sponge for learning. He's never satisfied with his performance. He always wants to better himself. He's not whining and moaning about his promotional situation. In fact, he's going to great lengths to thank people who've helped him. Those are the guys that we want to see succeed. We root for. We pay our money to see. And a loss with somebody like that means less to us because of the whole package that they offer. But some of these other guys, the bottom line is it's just a job. It's just a job. And eventually boxing fans figure it out and they move on. And in my mind, I have completely moved on from Billy Joe Saunders. There's very little left he has to offer.
Shout out to Sweet Science for joining us in the live YouTube chat. Interesting conversation going back and forth between him, Lisa. I think it's unrivaled as well. in terms of one Anthony Joshua. Keep that conversation going. I'm liking the comments, and also while you do making the comments about one Anthony Joshua, be sure to hit that like button here on Facebook. If you're not subscribed already, please subscribe to Pound for Pound Boxing Report on YouTube. Unrivaled says that he believes that Billy Joe Saunders will fight John Ryder in a rematch. I'll go to you, Daniel. Your favorite fighter, at least one of your favorite fighters, and you can finish off the conversation, Jacob. But to you, Daniel, first, your reaction to the signing of Billy Joe Saunders by Matchroom. Sinister laugh there by Daniel, folks. Sinister laugh.
I can't wait to hear this.
Oh, Billy Ho, you don't disappoint. Okay. First off, you pretty much ducked Gennady Golovkin when he had the chance to unify the titles and talk about everything else. And second, and this is probably another case where Andy Ruiz doesn't want any fight to be in the UK. You had to get an obscene level of home cooking against Akabov. Got lucky that you got paired up with a David Lemieux who you can box circles around. And now you leave probably the one guy that could tolerate you in Frank Warren for Eddie Hearn over a fight that you may not even be able to get. And let's not forget Billy Ho, like his usual routine of ballooning up to the point where he compare him to Michelin Man.
Yeah, and see, then that's my thing. Excuse me for interrupting. That's the thing about Billy Joe. As much as I've criticized Fury in the past, I have to give him credit for the person that he is now and the fighter that he's become now since his comeback. He stayed on track in terms of being active, in terms of keeping his weight down, in terms of staying disciplined. Billy Joe Saunders, sir, you talk about how you and Fury, how you guys are fellow travelers. Learn from your fellow traveler and get your act right. Get your act right in terms of your career in that regard. Proceed, Daniel.
All right. We're going back to Michelin Man here, Billy Ho Saunders. You have to remember, most of his training camps just spent him trying to make weight. And now the big fight you want to put, you put yourself in position to get a big fight in the UK in a division that has long been dominated by UK fighters, top caliber fighters. Joe Calzaghe, Nigel Benn, Chris Eubanks Sr. You're suggesting this motherfucking Chris Eubanks Jr.? That's what you're throwing at me? Hey, I got out of an impossible position in Callum Smith. Let me talk about another impossible position, now without Heyman. I'm like, yes, granted, Matchroom, it's Matchroom. It's not Golden Boy. But it's still the Zone versus the PBC. And we've seen the Zone and ESPN work out the differences. We have yet to see either the Zone or ESPN work out the differences with the PBC or Fox. What kind of bullshit you trying to throw at us, Billy Ho? I'm like, okay, you got a belt off the fact that the WBO in the UK is known as the Warren Boxing Organization. But oh God. Like there's only so much you can do. Like He's getting close to topping Terry Flanagan on my list. You have to be a pretty obscene bastard to try to top Terry Flanagan on my list. He's getting close.
Wrap up this conversation, Jacob. What do you make of this?
I'm probably not going to make a lot of friends on this panel here. I'm gonna roll with Billy Joe on this one for a couple reasons. You know, I know he's had his problems. I think he's a talented guy, but yes, he's had his problems with weight. He's had his problems with his foolery. But I think this move is very strategic in the sense that if he wants to get the big money fights and he wants to get the championship opportunities, much like the PBC did with the welterweight division and some other divisions where they scooped up most of the top fighters in that division so that they can fight each other. And as much disdain as Gus has for Hearn, and I'm not going to argue with him on some of these questionable things. He is gathering a stable under this DAZN platform and we see how these other promotion companies or networks, they don't work well with each other, or they rarely do work well with each other. So this is going to give him the most opportunity to get a Canelo fight, to get a Golovkin fight, to get a Callum Smith fight. There's a bunch of different options there. Danny Jacobs fight, if he's because I think Jacobs is going to move up. There's a lot of fighters on that platform.
Oh no, I get why he did it. I get why he's doing it. He wants those big fights, but don't sell me on a rematch with Eubank Jr. Nah.
No, I mean, I didn't really. From what I heard from Billy Joe, I think that was more of a Eddie Hearn idea. So
that's what I
maybe
mean, Eddie Hearn. Don't sell me on that. No.
So, but again, here's the thing. The promoter is one part of it. Fighter is the other part of it. They don't have to sign the fight. They can tell their promoter, no, I don't want that stupid fight. From what I heard from Billy Joe in his interview, he was saying that if he can't beat Eubank, he shouldn't even be boxing anymore. I don't think he really wants that fight. I think he wants these other fights, and I'll give him shit for getting this. I think he got a super middleweight belt, but same thing with fucking Canelo. Canelo did the same stupid thing. He went after the weak Rocky Fielding, who had a belt, and he poached it. So he's not. They're not that much different in that sense. And so I think it's a strategic move. I think Eddie Hearn, to Gus's point, is gonna, maybe spit out all these other fights and try to get everybody, I guess, under his control. But at the end of the day, the fighter really has to make that decision on whether they want to sign that contract and fight that fight. They can tell their promoter, manager, whatever, no, this is the fight I want. And if either the promoter is going to do it and their manager is going to do it for them or not. But public opinion would definitely sway in their favor if they said, hey, I was offered this fight, but I don't want that fight. Nobody wants to see that fight. The fight I want is this, and this person's ducking me, or this person didn't want to fight, doesn't want to fight me. So I think that would sway more people in his direction. So I'm not mad at this whole thing. It's, I guess, sadder for Warren, because he stuck with them for so long. But I mean, this is the game. I think he's limited with his opportunities with Warren, unfortunately. And with the DAZN and Matchroom thing, I think it just opens up the possibilities of bigger fights.
A couple of comments in the chat before we move on to the next topic. Excuse me. Lisa says she would love to see Eubanks Jr. versus Charlo. The question would be at what weight Eubanks Jr. currently fights at 168 pounds, while Charlo fights at 160. He says Eubank Jr. that he can still make 160. I don't know what kind of incentive that is for Charlo to fight him. Charlo being the WBC middleweight champion, I don't know how much interest is in that fight. But it's a decent matchup. It's a decent matchup. Sweet Science says that Billy Joe Saunders is talented, but in his opinion, he will struggle against the elite at 68. He would like for him to stay at 160 pounds. I'm going to the next topic here, last news topic before we preview the fights. One fight to talk about in the previous segment. Um, the beef between Regis Prograis and the World Boxing Super Series. I'm going to you with this, Gail, and then you can follow up Gus and then Jacob and Daniel. Late last week, I wrote about this for Three Kings Boxing. Billy Joe Regis Prograis, Rougarou, as he calls himself, um, him and his promoter, his name escapes me right now, DeBella Entertainment, filed
You might got cut off again.
Mike, I'm going to have to ask you to repeat yourself.
$100,000.
There we go.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, you lost me. Okay,
Yeah.
let me go back. The beef between Regis Prograis and the World Boxing Super Series, uh, the crux of the issue seems to be three payments according to an escrow deal, $500,000 each. The first one was due early this August. The second one due later on this month, and final one due in September. Uh, Progress and DeBella Entertainment in a federal district court in New Jersey filed an official suit with the World Boxing Super Series Friday. I wrote about this with Three Kings Boxing. Um, Basically saying they're unhappy and if suing to drop out of the tournament, the World Boxing Super Series are going to fight it. So in terms of Progress's final against Josh Taylor, it's up in the air. What do you think of this?
I think Prograis, DeBella, and Churchill Boxing Management, who is Prograis' manager, have been pretty patient with Richard Schaefer in the World Boxing Super Series. And it is no secret that they struggle monetarily, that it's become just shy of a Ponzi scheme where the fight that happens prior pays for the next one coming along. And there's a lot of systemic problems with the whole operation. And some of it is almost comical. For example, everyone's very impressed with the big lighting grid they've got. It's very unique in boxing, and the announcing catchphrase is "step into the light," but it limits where you can hold the fights because this lighting grid is so damn big that a lot of venues that would make a lot more sense for this tournament can't accommodate it, and they won't compromise with it. So they end up, putting fights in some odd areas, because they've got to drag that thing along, and it's sort of symptomatic of the series has been very ambitious. We applaud what they've done in the ring. That's where the ambition should really count. Unfortunately, sometimes startups, which they are, need to be a little more frugal and a little more careful. And they think that the money's going to come in, and they sort of hope things will work out okay, but it causes problems, delays, issues with the fighters, and meanwhile, the clock's ticking for these guys. Hope is not a viable strategy. And Prograis and DeBella are smart enough to look at this situation and say, we have been hanging in there and hanging in there, hanging in there. But you know what? There are other options. There are bigger fights. We can't sit around on our hands forever. This is not the time for a talent like Prograis in the prime of his career to be sitting on his butt on the shelf, waiting for them to get their financial act together. So they made the calculated decision that, you know, paying now to get out and suing them, is going to be well worth it down the road. That the payoff for charting their own path um, will be greater. And this is far from the first fighter who has threatened to pull out. Ivan Baranchyk did the same thing. Now, they managed to bring him back into the fold, but he was having the exact same frustrations with them. So, I hate to see these things happen. As fans, the series has absolutely delivered in all of the tournaments, but somebody with a little more financial and logistical experience needs to be brought on board and plug the holes in the ship, because it's going to sink if they aren't careful.
To be specific, Progress's issues is with Camosa AG, which is the promoter behind the promotion behind the World Boxing Super Series tournament. Um, Details here. It was a $500,000 deposit that was due on the 1st of August, followed by another $500,000 deposit due on the 12th, then a final $500,000 due on September 12th. And according to Progress and DeBella, the first of those payments has not been put down yet, and through back and forth emails, and it seems to them that Camosa was hemming and hawing around that initial deposit, excuse me, and because of that, they decided to file suit. Now, the World Boxing Super Series released a statement, said basically uh, they released they released a statement a couple of days later, basically saying that they were on the up and up, and that they're going to defend the tournament, and they're going to fight this lawsuit and try to keep Progress in the tournament, and so the final with Taylor can go forth. I'll go to you, Daniel, and then you can follow up, Jacob, your reaction to the lawsuits and the response from the WBSS.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting when you have a tournament where most of the fighters or most of the top tier fighters are not European based, and you try to make it a European centered tournament. That's one of the flaws, unfortunately, of the World Boxing Super Series. And the unfortunate side effect we mentioned it is, yeah, Prograis is not the first. Yeah, Baranchyk almost pulled out. I think at one point Inoue was going to pull out because his money wasn't right. So it's not really surprising that this would finally hit the fan, particularly in a situation when you have Prograis basically almost have a ready-made fight going if he chooses to in trying to get it with Jose Ramirez. Because remember, even when winning the fights of the tournaments, who he was talking about? Jose Ramirez. So with Prograis, it's a little interesting because there's an option. And like I said, we've heard this tournament. Remember, this Sarland thought that the Saudis were gonna finance this tournament, and I guess they stopped once it became clear that they were not going to be hosting the finals for a lot of the tournament. And second is they made other tournaments that make no sense in the series. Okay, you decided this year during bantamweight and during welterweight. I get in a sense why you do it, considering Usyk moved up to heavyweight, but there was no real incentive to do another cruiserweight tournament. That is redundant when you having all these money issues, and then now you're going to have to run to paying all these cruiserweights money that you could have used for the tournaments he did announce. It's very, very, very sad in a way that this is what's happening. And ultimately, what's going to shape up in the end is either this is going to be dragged on for a long time legal battle, and I think Lou DiBella is ready, pretty much, very, very much prepared to do this legal battle, or you would just have to throw your hands up and say, okay, Prograis out. You have to put a sub, do what you did before when a fighter got injured, put a sub in, have Josh Taylor beat the crap out of him, and just have Josh Taylor be declared the winner, because they're already on shaky ground as it is. And a prolonged legal battle, no matter how much they think that they can save it to, it's only going to be worse. Especially, like I said, if the lawsuit is going to be in the U.S.
Your reaction to all of this, Jacob?
So it's kind of, the whole thing's kind of weird because I do. So I was, when Gail said the Baranchek thing, I do remember that, but I don't remember hearing anything else during the first season, and then in most of the other fights, that they've done for the second season. You know,
Well,
and
as Lisa pointed out in the chat, and we'll mention this final fight to close the show. She's right. There was some rumblings in terms of anyway, um, whether that final was going to be made, but things eventually got resolved. But yeah, there was an issue with Donaire, not anyway, but with Donaire, in terms of he was having some rumblings about the final, if it was going to happen and whether it was going to happen, and that he might pull out. So there was a little bit of issues there, but things got eventually resolved, and we're going to see that fight.
but were those rumblings specific to when are they going to set the fight, or money issues? Because I think those are two separate things. I know that there was some complaints from.
More on the point of date.
Right. Yeah, because I remember, what's his face, the guy that won, Groves. I remember he was complaining because they hadn't set the finals for his fight with.
And I believe there was some issues in the past with Progress in the World Boxing Super Series at the very beginning of the junior welterweight tournament as well. So
Yeah, and then the other thing is I don't know, like, is it potentially possible that some of these guys are getting paid more money to be part of the tournament, and so they're able to pay some of the fighters because they're not asking, or they're not paying them as much, but someone like maybe like Prograis, who's getting maybe more for, if he was able to make that deal, that they're struggling to pay for him. So there's a lot there's a lot of problems here. um you know I think it's been like Gail said, it's been a great two series. I mean, there's been some great fights, and the results have been satisfying, for the most part. But I mean, again, the business of boxing, you know, it just doesn't seem like the money, maybe their original idea, and the way that money was sent, it doesn't seem like they were very smart about it. I would hate to see this, whole thing fall apart, but um, again, if just like how the PBC had its little kind of decline, and then how we're talking about the zone potentially having decline, HBO getting out of boxing, the pay-per-view model not being what it was. So there's a lot of, I think, financial problems that boxing as a whole is struggling with, because I don't think there's the huge name fighters that there used to be, and maybe some of the interest has waned, even though the sport has, in my opinion, gotten more exciting, with some of these younger up and coming guys. Um, So I hope they're able to work everything out. I did see that statement from the World Boxing Super Series saying they were going to fight it, but I mean, DeBella's not dumb, and he's gonna, if he has a case. I mean, I think he's gonna go for it. What it looks like. So hopefully we'll get to see them, even if it isn't in the World Boxing Super Series. We'll get to see that Taylor Prograis fight, because I thought that was a winnable fight for Taylor, and I thought it was going to be a really good fight. So, hopefully we get to see it at some point. But we'll see.
Yeah, and your last point was the key for me, in terms of Taylor having the possibility of the win. The most disappointing thing for me is that this is the fight between Prograis and Taylor on paper. It's a darn good fight. A fight between arguably the top two fighters in the division. Yes, I know Ramirez has two belts now, but in my opinion, I think Taylor beats Ramirez. I think Prograis beats Ramirez. Um, so yeah, very good fight that could potentially go by the wayside. Lisa, you may be right in the chat. Hopefully some wealthy investors will get involved, and even as we're having a discussion here, I'm reading some things, and there may be a meeting between Prograis, DeBella, and the World Boxing Super Series to try to hopefully resolve the issue. That's what I'm hearing, just running through some articles, as during the recording of this show. So hopefully things will get figured out. Hopefully all parties can come to a consensus, because yeah, that is a really the fight between Prograis and Taylor, to me, is one of the best fights that could be made in 2019. Lisa mentioned things got it figured out between Donaire and Inoue. Let's talk about that right quick. Uh, we have a date between Naoya Inoue, Nonito Donaire, the World Boxing Super Series Bantamweight Final. It's going to happen November 7th in Japan. I'll just ask everybody around here your thoughts on the fight happening on a Thursday. It's going to be streamed live on DAZN, but still, you figure a fight like this would be on a weekend, or be on a Friday or a Saturday. What do you think about this fight happening on a Thursday, presumably early morning here, U.S. time? Your reaction?
I don't think it's going to make a bit of difference with the American audience. This is a fight for the hardcore fans. It doesn't matter, for example, to me, whether it's Thursday morning, crack early, Friday morning, crack early, or Saturday morning, crack early. I got to get up crack early to see this on the West Coast. And if it's a typical Japanese fight, it's going to be every bit of 4 in the morning. I've done it before when I needed to, and I would do it for this. But seriously, how many American fans are actually going to make that kind of effort? It's not going to matter. The hardcore, will be there. Hopefully, there'll be, good promotion of a replay, the fact that it's available streaming at your convenience. And we know how Inoue's fights go. You wake up at 4 o'clock for 7 minutes. I am a big fan of Donaire. I like what he stands for in the sport and as a human being. I hope he takes some rounds. But we've said that before about some of Inoue's opponents. So I'm not too troubled by the date. If that works in Japan, if this is a big seller, if it's the right TV night and the venue was available and it all made sense, I think in a boxing crazy country like Japan, it's sort of the equivalent of a Thursday night football sort of event for them. So put in that context, it doesn't seem that weird to me.
And it's going to be held at basically a stadium, 37,000 seat stadium. So this is a big deal over there. I go to you, Daniel and Jacob. Any follow up on this, or do you echo Gail's feelings regarding the fight happening basically midweek?
Um, it is a fight for the hardcore. It will, like I said, Gail will luckily have it be up a little bit earlier. I'm probably already be up to see it, but it's it's a fight that you're gonna miss. And luckily, this is the one of the good things about having it in a streaming service. At least, if you don't want to wake up to it, you don't have to because after the fight's over, it'll likely already be ready to stream when you wake up. So it really doesn't bother me. It is a morning fight for the hardcore. It wasn't really built. Like I said, this is pretty much how we talked about the tournament was built. The tournament was built without the American audience in mind. So it's not surprising, but I'm gonna be up.
Same general attitude from you, Jacob.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gil and Daniel hit it on the head. I mean, in the sense that, I mean, boxing itself. I mean, these even though Daniel is a good name, he's not the Daniel of old, and he's been kind of out of the, I would say, out of the spotlight for a little bit. So the hardcores are really the ones that are watching these fights. Um, so I don't think it really makes a difference when they have it. I'm just excited for it, and I'm hoping Daniel pulls out some magic. Like I just want it to be a good fight. I don't want it to be a blowout. I want it to be a good showing, and for as talented as Inoue is, I really like Daniel. I think he's just a good guy, and he's one of the original guys though too, with all this stuff that's been going on in boxing with the VADA testing and all that stuff. He's one of the original guys that made sure that he was part of that program, and was kind of putting himself out there to be an example for other fighters to be enrolled so that they can be clean, or at least the illusion of clean program, which I think he is. And he's had a great career, definitely Hall of Famer. So I really like the guy. That I just think he's a good overall dude. He's a good example for the sport. And I just hope he doesn't get hurt either too. But he still has some pop, and I think he's gonna make it. I think he's gonna surprise a lot of people. I think he's gonna make it a pretty good fight.
I mean, look, I feel that Inoue is going to win, as do many others. But I've heard some folks say that Donaire would not only win, but Donaire was going to knock Inoue out. And as you just said, Jacob, Donaire, he still can punch with either hand, especially when it comes to that left hook. He still got a lot of thunder in that punch. So power is going to be the biggest key for him. What happens if he lands on Inoue? Can Inoue take it? And from that perspective, it's going to be exciting because we know how much Inoue, how hard Inoue can hit. So it's safe to say that someone is going to get knocked out. I think Donaire is going to get knocked out, but he has at the very least a puncher's chance. Let's go to some previews here. One preview uh, of note, and that is Emmanuel Navarrete, who made a splash last year, defeating Isaac Dogbe to win the WBO 122-pound title December last year. Fought Dogbe in a rematch this past May. Defeated him again, this time via knockout in the last round. Punished him uh, severely in both fights. He's coming back into the ring this Saturday in LA to fight a fighter by the name of Vaca from Phoenix. And I'll just ask anybody here, I just ask for just your general opinion. For me, I'll just say offhand, I put Devaka in the same category I put Otto Walden. For those who don't know, Otto Wallen is the guy that Tyson Fury is going to fight next in September. Hadn't heard of him. Just like I haven't seen Otto Wallen video of him fighting or sparring on YouTube. I haven't seen video of Devaka fighting or sparring on YouTube. That says to me that Navarrete, who has power, who has height, who has length, it smells easy title defense. Your thoughts, folks? Anyone?
Well, I'll jump in. No, I don't disagree at all. This is a showcase fight. Um, he's being paired on this undercard in the Los Angeles area with Jesse Magdaleno, who will be a draw as well. What's most interesting to me about this entire card is the venue. The venue is brand new to boxing fans. It's at the Bank of California Stadium. This is where the LAFC Major Soccer League franchise plays. And it is right across the parking lot from the Memorial Coliseum. It's a dandy little stadium. It's very pretty. Um, it's really been put together well. The only other time that it's been used for boxing was, of all things, the public media workout for Canelo and Golovkin 2 last summer, about the same time, late August. And it was really an enjoyable venue. It was very well done. Some of the facilities inside the venue, the clubs, the availability of the food, the sight lines. It's just a super nice venue. And I can't help but think to myself that somebody's looking at this venue and wonders, why can't this be the new StubHub in the Los Angeles area? StubHub Center, aka Dignity Dog Park, or
No,
whatever
it's still StubHub.
now. Yeah, it's still StubHub. That's why I call it the Dignity Dog
Did it
Park.
Dignity Dog Park? Did you
Yeah,
just say dog park?
yeah, that's what I call it. That's right. I refuse to. I refuse to.
I refuse to call it that other name. It's still StubHub.
No, yeah, I'll give it the Dignity just so you know what it is. But I'm not calling it Dignity Sports Health Park. It's Dignity Dog Park. All right.
Dignity,
So,
diggity dog. It's still
yeah,
StubHub.
which is, by the way, where the announced card is for Jaime Munguia, and we'll, I'm sure, get into that in the coming week.
Yeah, just mention that right quick. Mention that right quick before we shut
So,
things down.
yeah, so of course, with the whole, complete blow up over the Canelo Golovkin third fight, he relinquished the September, his magical hold on the September 14th, Saturday, Mexican Independence Day weekend fight. So wisely, Bob Arum, never one to shirk a good opportunity when he sees it, immediately booked the Tyson Fury Otto Wallen fight into the T-Mobile Arena. Well, good luck with that. But good for him that he secured the date, because some people will go to anything, let's face it. And he'll put on a show. You know what? Fury is going to walk in with a mariachi band wearing a sombrero. Mark my words, you heard it first here. In the meantime, Golden Boy, desperately, trying to save something, has booked their own Mexican Independence Day card at the Dignity Dog Park, aka StubHub in Carson, headlined by Jaime Munguia, who is fighting an African opponent named, and I've got to pull his name up because it isn't somebody that's a household word. Let's just say that. He will be fighting Patrick Alate. Think about rhyming that with Richard Clotte, and it's spelled the same way. And then on the undercard, a fighter that we mentioned earlier in the show, Ryan Garcia, will be fighting Avery Sparrow. That's not a bad little fight, but this is sort of the consolation card so that they can still claim to have a card going on Mexican Independence Day. And it's StubHub, and it's, still going to be a nice late summer, early fall evening. Hey, people will show up. Munguia's got plenty of fans. Golden Boy will be smart and stack the card full of local Southern California regional guys, and if each one of them sells 500 or 1,000 seats, they'll fill the place up. That's okay. What was very interesting, however, is the fight announcement news conference took place yesterday, and the MC was Oscar De La Hoya, who did show up, who ran the show in both Spanish and English. I wouldn't say it's the most energetic appearance I've ever seen from Oscar, But, he looked relatively okay. I mean, it certainly raises a lot of question marks as to what's going on. Whatever the problems, whatever the issues, professional, personal, I respect what Oscar has meant to the sport. I respect that he has for a long time run a very viable promotional organization that has drawn locally among guys from the generations after him, like him, Mexican American for the most part. I wish him well. I hope he conquers whatever demons are coming after him. Again, clearly there's an issue. So that's what
Yeah.
we've got coming up on September 14th on that weekend. But transitioning back to the original quick topic for this weekend. So, Top Rank, again, seizing the potential for an opportunity. StubHub Center is not in Los Angeles proper. It's at the very southern border of what could be considered the LA area, whereas the Bank of California Stadium is right up in the middle of, LA Civic proper. And if one great medium-sized outdoor venue in Los Angeles is good, maybe another venue that could be reconfigured for either a smaller type of fight, sort of off in a corner section, or maybe it proves viable for actually putting, tens of thousands of fans in a seat at a place in LA that isn't, the Staples Center or the Forum. And I will tell you, I'm remiss in not knowing what the capacity is of Bank of California Stadium, and I'm going to check that. And it's pretty normal for an American soccer built venue.
It's a
22.
smaller. It's
20,
smaller than the StubHub, but
it is.
the way that they're going to configure it, it's not going to take up a bunch. It's going to be like in the corner, so it's not going to be like how when Steve Forbes fought Oscar De La Hoya
Right.
on the field, and they did it. They put the ring in the middle of the field. It's going to be in the corner, and kind of almost like a baseball stadium, like when Dodger Stadium does like a concert or something like that. They put it like to a side or to to a corner, and then they fill up like part of the stadium.
Yeah, and it's brand new. It's barely a year and a half old.
It's actually the old site of the LA Sports Arena that was there. That's what they tore down to build the LAFC Bank of California Stadium.
So it opened in April of last year, and it is first rate. It's absolutely beautiful inside the corridors and the various facilities inside. I would argue it's more luxurious than T-Mobile is, even in parts. If you go back and look at photos or video of the Canelo Golovkin media workout last August, I imagine they'll configure the ring exactly the way they did for that promotion. And you're right, Jacob. It was much more. It would be like putting the ring on home plate, not past second base, right? And so it's right up against the seats. If they get 5,000 people there, 7,000 people there, I'm sure they'll consider it a success for the first time, and they'll get hardcore fans. And I am just so damn curious about how that's all going to work. I'm going to go up and check it out. So we'll give you a full report, folks, next week.
Daniel, Jacob, your thoughts on this fight?
Which fight is it again?
See, that's how little you think of it. Navarrete versus Navarrete in the Vaca.
Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry about that. No, I was actually because I'm watching Matisse Molina on Joe's stream right now. But it's a good fight as far as for Navarrete. You can get a decent good fight out of it. You had to fight dog bait where. Granted, he gave it his all, but you were just a better fighter. So I'm not shocked by it. And like I said, it keeps the title up. It keeps it in the division where you're going to run into, like I said, the unification scenarios with Ray Vargas and Danny Roman. So I can always say give him a gimme fight and then try to see if you can compare him with those two, because particularly Vargas, because granted, yeah, Navarrete doesn't really, like I said, excite people the way you would expect like a knockout artist to be excited, but that'd be a damn good fight, him and Ray Vargas.
Final word on this, Jacob.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, pretty much what you said, Mike. It's, the guy's undefeated, but he hasn't really fought anybody of note, and so uh, I guess when somebody wins a championship and then defends it against the guy he beat, I get a lot of times they'll give him a little gimme fight, and um, I have a feeling that Top Rank's just kind of testing the waters of this venue to see how well it does, and like Gail said, Magdalena's on it. This kid Barboza Jr. He's on it. He's the guy that knocked out Mike Alvarado at the Lomachenko fight that I was at. So he's got a couple. They do very similar to what Golden Boy does. They put some of their up and coming fighters, and they'll put them in with some seasoned guys, and to keep them active. So it's not anything new. Um, I would say though, as far as I've never been to here. I'm still debating whether I'm going to go. I want to go, but I have to see if it's going to work out for me. But I'll definitely hit up Gal if I end up out there. But um, the difference though between this and the StubHub dog park or whatever the heck you call it, um, the StubHub where they have most of their fights is in a tennis court arena. So they have that advantage because it's kind of set up for under 9,000. I think it's like 8,400 people, seats wise, and it's kind of the perfect setup. Here, they're going to have to configure it to be uh, on a soccer field, like in the corner. At least from what I was looking at the tickets, it's going to be set up like towards the corner, and then they're going to sell some of the bleacher seats and whatnot, or the seats in the rafters and things like that, and then they'll have the floor and stuff like that. So it's not going to be configured to be too bigger. So um, I'm definitely intrigued by the stadium and just a new venue in LA more than anything. It's a plus for me and Gail because we're always looking for fights in the area, and so we have Staples, we got Forum, we got StubHub, we got this place now. Ontario has a place. It's not called the Citizens Bank Arena anymore, but there's plenty of places in the LA area that host fights. So it's better for me and Gail, because then we can go and see these fights.
Hey,
So
and there's tons of club fights. There
yeah,
are,
Fantasy Springs is not too far away, and
and hell,
Orozco.
Roy Jones Jr. is bringing another one of his cards back to San Diego here in a week from Saturday. So, yeah, it's good to be a fight fan in Southern California, Las Vegas region for a reason. The fan base can support it, and they attend.
And I think that's going to be the final word on this particular episode. Uh, First, want to thank Gus from Corruption in Boxing, who had to dip out early because of work. He joins us as often as he can live from Europe. So I know it's a struggle for him because it's early or mid morning now where he resides. If you want to check out all things regarding him, just go to Corruption in Boxing on YouTube. You can find his channel, his page where he talks a lot of fight stuff. He also writes about music as well. I want to thank everybody who joined us live in the YouTube chat. Lisa Bales, Denise Wards, Sweet Science, Unrivaled Boxing, Talking News, What You Need. He dipped in here for a second. Plan Plot. See if I'm missing anyone else. Jeff Boxing as well, who joined us. Again, if you like what you heard this evening, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. Also, subscribe to us on Spotify and iTunes, SoundCloud. We are on Spotify now, Pound for Pound Box Report. So please check us out there. Um, I'll go to the panel here. Again, the show starting with ladies first. Going to end the show starting with ladies first. Gail from Community Digital News. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk media, because you do teach media. For those who want to talk small business advice, let the folks know where they can find you.
Well, thank you all for those who have hung in live and who are listening recorded on our new platform. It is a little bit of an experiment, but hey, it won't take us long. This was our shakedown, get acquainted round. So we'll be good next time. You can find my regular column at Communities Digital News, which is COMM DIGI News, comdiginews.com.
Um, Daniel from the Inscriber, for those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk the NBA, especially when it comes to the Miami Heat, let the folks know where they can hit you up.
Yes, folks, you can find me on Twitter at Ruckus99. Try to do a show hopefully tomorrow with folks at 4boxings.com. We can take that up a little break. And that and my laptop was broken. Thank God I've actually now got it fixed. And definitely watch, because next week is going to be fun to preview some of the fights coming up if they don't fall apart.
A lot of interesting fights. A lot of interesting fights. Jacob, last but not least, Jacob from Jab Hook Boxing. For those who want to talk the sweet science, for those who want to talk movies, because you are a semi-regular on the Wrong Reel film podcast. Let the folks know where they can find you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show again, Mike. And yeah, I can be found at Twitter, JRATM23. And yeah, you want to talk boxing and film? That's what I do pretty much when I'm not working.
Indeed, indeed. Also, shout out to Bo. Shout out to my brothers over at 3 Kings Boxing. I write for 3 Kings Boxing. If you want to talk the sweet science, if you want to talk movies, not movies, but music and fitness with me, you know what it is on Twitter, Brother JR.
Do we lose you?
We can hear you now, I think.
I don't hear anything.
Can you hear us, Mike?
And that's why we had this feeling out round tonight for our first try at a
Sorry,
new
I dipped out again. Sorry, I've been having bad connections all night. Let me repeat that again. If you want to talk the sweet science, if you want to talk music, if you want to talk fitness, you know what it is on Twitter, Brother JR at Brother JR76, where you can find me. As I said at the beginning of the show, if you want to find out all things regarding Pound for Pound Boxing Report, the blog page is the place to go to, p4pboxingreport.wordpress.com. Check the right of the blog page, you will find to where you can find Pound for Pound me and a PayPal donate link. You can find those links there on the blog page. On the next episode, and oh yeah, Let's Build Together Fitness Challenge. It began August 5th. You can join if you're interested. Reach out to me on Twitter. Reach out to me via the blog page. You can join anytime this month. Interesting, fun fitness challenge. I do daily updates. I keep in constant contact with you back and forth on a weekly, a lot of times a daily basis. So if you're interested, fun fitness challenge on all things Beachbody, and 2-week free trial on Beachbody that runs continuously through the year. If you're interested, reach out to me. I'll let you do. On the next episode, we will do a recap of Navarrete and the Vaca, and we will do a preview of all the boxing that's happening on the 24th of August. Sergey Kovalev, Anthony Yard, that fight is finally going to happen. You may be surprised at my prediction for that fight, so stay tuned for that. Also on the 24th, Juan Francisco Estrada, coming off of his rematch win over Sri Sakat Sorrungvasai to win the junior bantamweight title. He's going to be fighting in his hometown of Hermosillo, Mexico, going to fight facing a fighter by the name of Beeman. Um, who else is fighting on the 24th? One of the best fighters in the world that you may not have seen yet, Kosei Tanaka. He's defending his flyweight belt. So we will talk about those three fights in particular. A lot of fights happening as well on the 24th. So yeah, a lot of fights happening on the 24th that we will preview. So yeah, episode 262 Pound for Pound Box Report in the books. Again, want to thank everybody who joined us in the live chat. For Gail, for Daniel, for Jacob, for Gus from Corruption and Boxing, I'm your host, Michael. We will see you next time. Everyone have a good evening. Good night.
Buenas noches.